Hello everyone, welcome to Canteen Cup. My name is Scott and it got cold. Looks like we have a cold front coming through and I'm starting to hear rain on my tin roof out there, so it's a good thing I'm inside today. Alright, well today's video we want to talk about a communications plan or a comm plan, and I am gearing this specifically towards crews, mags, groups, not organized professional people. You know, people in the military, the police, the Civil Air Patrol, you know, they are guided by their infrastructure. In other words, somebody higher up gives them a radio. And the radio typically has set frequencies on it, and they may have 5 frequencies, and they'll say, okay, you use channel A for this, you use channel B for this, you use channel C for this, and you have those radios. And also that, you know, when people train, you know, like when you're in the military, you're training all the time. You know, you're going out in the field, you're using the radios, you're doing other things. However, when we talk about our mags and our crews and our teams or whatever, we have what we call a day job. You know, this is kind of like a side hustle, and so we can't devote as much time to it. Therefore, our plans need to be, we'll just say, simpler, easy to use, something that we can remember because we do other things with our lives. You know, so really what I'm saying is that we are different, and just for lack of a generic term, we are not like a professional organization like the military, police, fire, rescue, whatever. And so we have a lot of different people. We have people with different interests. We have people with different levels of conviction, and we have people with different levels of prosperity. And I say that, of economic prosperity, and I say that because unlike the professional organizations, we often have to buy our own equipment, and we can't necessarily afford to buy the high-end stuff that the professional services can buy. It's amazing how much they pay for some of their radios compared to the stuff we get. So I am gearing this towards the crew, the mag, you know, limited funding, limited amount of training, limited amount of training opportunities available, and the amount of time that each person can put into, you know, into the communications portion of prepping. You know, hopefully we're all trying to have a garden, we're all maybe trying to raise animals, we're all trying to put away food, store food, prepare food, preserve food. There's just a lot going on in our lives. It's not, you know, not as straightforward. It's not like we have 8 hours a day to do all this training and then go home and watch TV. You know, it's like we go to work for 8 hours and then we come home, and in that little time between when we come home from work and when we go to bed is the time we can set aside for prepping. So it is a little bit different. I've got notes down here because there's a lot of things I wanted to say, and we'll try and get them all out. You know, as our groups, mags, teams, I'll just call them crews, you know, we are generally a pretty diverse population as far as skills, education levels, monetary incomes, interest, just a whole conglomeration of people put together. And so when we talk about a comms plan, and like I said earlier, because we do so many other things, that when we create a comms plan or a comms SOP, which stands for Standard Operating Procedure, we need to keep it as relatively simple as we can, easy to remember, easy to use, because it's not our primary function in life, really. And so with that, I'm going to revert back to the Army acronym PACE. It stands for Primary, Alternate, contingency, and emergency. The PACE acronym is a U.S. Army acronym, and it comes out of their communications command. And of course, we use it for a lot of other things, but it does come from communications, and it is a good method to use when developing your comm plans for your crews. So, in going about this, I want to start by saying I put a lot of thought into this, and I have done comms plans before. I've done comms plans for professional organizations as well as for the, we'll just say, the prepper style people. And complexity doesn't work real well with, cruise type groups. It's because people have the other interests, like I said. So we want to use the KISS principle, as in a KISS, and that acronym stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. So what I want to do now is I want to go down a comms plan, and this is somewhat generic, and in this particular circumstance, I'm talking about a comms plan for a crew, and maybe for a couple of crews that are located nearby to each other. But when you start getting into regional and national comms plans, they do get a little more complex, and probably not a good discussion for this video. So that being said, we're going to go down PACE. So P in PACE stands for your primary means of communications. And what that means is really, what do you use every day of the week to communicate with other members of your crew? Cell phone, text message, email, Facebook, FaceTime, Twitter, whatever. But that should be your primary means of communication. Why? Because you're using it already, and it's easy to use because you do it every day. So that should be your primary means of communication. It's just whatever you're doing day to day. Now, moving down a notch, let's say that some of your primary means of communications are being restricted. You have a cell phone outage. You can't text anymore. Your prepaid phone has run out of minutes. Or something has happened to the infrastructure of cell phones and they have gone down. So now you need to move to an alternate means of communications. And this is really the important one where you should spend a lot of your time. Your alternate means could be one of your primary means of communications, maybe not, but it should be a place where people can go get 100% of the information they need. Okay, let me say that again. It's a place where they can go and get 100% of the information they need. And just for ease of conversation, we'll say that you chose a Facebook page, mymag.facebook.com, however Facebook does that, and that is your alternate. Now what that means is yeah, you put emergency information in there when you lost your primary means, but it also means that a lot of the everyday stuff that you're putting out on your primary means, somebody should be making sure that it goes into that Facebook page. In other words, let's use a church group, for example, and during the pandemic today, a lot of churches have gone to online services. So let's say that on Sunday, your church chose to have service at 10 o'clock, and they're going to use Zoom for the online service. So you or some member of your group who's ever in charge of that alternate means would put in on that Facebook page that church service is at 10 o'clock and we're going to use Zoom, and here is the link to the meeting. And if it changes next Sunday, they put that change in there. If something comes up, let's say that you're going to have a food buy. You're going to buy wheat, buckets of wheat. So besides your primary means where you're talking on cell phones and texting, whatever, somebody puts that information in that Facebook page saying, hey, we're going to have a wheat bucket buy. Wheat's going to cost this much a bucket. If you want X amount of buckets, contact this person. So the alternate means is really a backup to the primary means, but it should have 100% of the information in there, because you are training people to automatically go to that website when they have a question, and that way when the primary goes out, then they're automatically going to go to that Facebook page, and you will still be able to disseminate information. And the training part is just having that information there where people get used to going there, so that they don't have to think about, now what was my alternate means? Oh, I can go to Facebook, and they just automatically go. That's what you want. So that's really one of the more important ones. I mean, that's really the backbone of your comms plan, is your alternate means. Oh, that rain's coming down. I'm going to get wet going back in the house. All right. C is contingency. Now, when we get into these last two letters of the acronym, your communications is going to be degraded a little bit, but you're going to still be able to put information out, maybe not as much. You may not include things like we're going to have a wheat bucket buy, or you may not have a church service thing on the contingency part, but you're still going to be able to put out pertinent information. Now, what is contingency? And for this, typically means we probably lost internet, we lost our cell phones. All our normal means and our alternate means of communications are exalted, and we don't have those anymore. So we're going to contingency. And for this, I usually say this involves a radio. What radio service or services you use is up to your team, your crew, whatever. I can't tell you what to do, and I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a 10-man crew, and 9 of you have amateur radio licenses, technician's class or higher. Well, that's pretty straightforward, that probably your contingency is going to be amateur radio. On the other side of that, let's say you only have 1 amateur radio operator in your group. You may decide to use one of the other services that don't have a licensing or a licensing test requirement. CB radio, FRS, GMRS, business band. These are all different services you can use. Are they as full featured as amateur radio? No, but if that's what your group wants to use, and you can communicate, where you want, either between your crew, or if you have locally close other crews that you want to communicate with, you need to make sure that you can communicate with them. Again, the idea is being able to communicate with the people you want to communicate with. This doesn't mean that if you're in Texas that you want to talk to somebody up in Illinois. That may be outside of contingency, or that's actually part of another plan. But if you've got some crews within an hour of you, you may want to be able to reach out to them under contingency so you can mutually support one another. So that needs to be a part of your plan and how you accomplish that. Again, I can't tell you what to do. It all depends on what your crew or your crew's leadership decides to do. You may decide to get everybody to get an amateur radio license, and everybody gets radios. And like I said in my most recent past video, Baofungs are okay, if you understand their limitations. They're cheap, and so you may want to do that. Or you may want to get FRS radios. They're not that powerful, and they're good, maybe at the most a couple hundred yards. But if that's all you need, then that's what you use. So you need to decide. All right, moving on to emergency. Okay, this is the most severe form of communications. everything is down. You can no longer communicate even with your radios. You are having trouble, and this is when you would have to have a face-to-face or a meet time meeting. And what this might mean is that if nobody can contact anybody else, then you have a predetermined location and a predetermined time to meet. Meet at the church at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or meet at 7 in the morning or 5 at night. And that's where people can go and get their information and then bring it back to their families. The same thing with the contingency. Not only do you have to have the radios, but you probably need to set up some times and frequencies of when you're going to talk, because you don't want to keep your radio on all day because it runs down your battery. And if you're down to the contingency level, you may have power requirements that you may not be able to meet if you keep your radios turned on all day. So have a place to meet and have a time, and then be able to go there, or have your people know that, hey, if I can't contact you by my phone or Facebook or text or whatever, and I don't hear you on the radio, I know that at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, if I go to my church, somebody will be there to help me. It's a physical meeting where you disseminate information. How you disseminate that information, either verbally or maybe you print out some papers that you can hand out. Again, that's up to your individual crews. But have these in place now. Times are getting scary. So if you haven't thought about a comms plan, think about it. And like I said, have pace, have a primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. Keep it very simple, where if a person hasn't used the C or an E in a while, that it'll be pretty easy for them to remember, or they may have it written down somewhere in a paragraph or something. But make it easy, because the more complex you get it without accompanying training, the more likely it is that plan is going to fail. So be careful out there, everybody. Be safe. It's scary times we're in. Man, I just don't know what's going to happen. But get your comm plan together. Make sure that you can communicate between your folks, at least amongst your crew, for sure. So that's all I have. I hope this is a help. Subscribe if you like. Tell your friends. I'm going to put out some more videos as time goes on. But right now I've got other things I've got to worry about. But I'll keep it coming. So all stay safe and stay secure. And we'll see you.